All right, Alex Tabbitt, you're in Minneapolis. This is not what people there want. They want an impartial investigation. They want to see justice.
That's absolutely right, Katie. And we saw at least part of the statewide investigation here at this site just a few hours ago. Let me set the scene for you. We are where Alex Preddy lost his life on Saturday morning around 9 a.m. And as you can see, people are grieving, people are mourning as this community bands together. But this is also the site of where the state is conducting their own investigation. If you look over there, Katie, at that window, you can see bullet holes through that window. And just a few hours ago, we saw investigators from the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension take photographs, gather pieces of evidence as they try to conduct their own investigation. But of course, without access to the key pieces of evidence that the FBI gathered on the day of, that may be difficult. And we might see the same sort of standoff between the federal government and the state investigators that you saw with Renee Good. I mean, in Renee Good's case, for example, the FBI did not hand over the shell casings on the scene, the car that Renee Good was driving in the moment of, the eyewitness testimony that the FBI gathered on that day. And this gatekeeping, this standoff might make it very difficult for the state to eventually pursue charges in the case of Renee Good, and this time in the case of Alex Preddy. Now, as you noted, Tom Homan, the border czar, has taken over from Commander Greg Bavino of Border Patrol here in Minneapolis. And I want to read you a statement that Governor Walz's office has put out after that meeting that you noted between Governor Walz and Tom Homan. And that statement reads, quote, Governor Walz met with Tom Homan this morning and reiterated Minnesota's priorities: impartial investigations into the Minneapolis shootings involving federal agents, a swift, significant reduction in the number of federal forces in Minnesota, and an end to the campaign of retribution against Minnesota. And as of right now, Katie, that impartial investigation is something that a lot of people right here are asking for. Katie?
Yeah, no doubt about that. All right, let's talk about Kristi Noem for a second before we get to Homan. Here's what the National Review is writing about Kristi Noem, saying that she should be fired. She should be launched into the moon, or into the sun, actually. Out came Noem this weekend in the wake of the shooting to announce via previously undisclosed powers of clairvoyance this individual, who came with weapons and ammunition to stop a law enforcement operation of federal law enforcement officers, committed an act of domestic terrorism. That's the facts. Oh, are they? Alex Preddy committed domestic terrorism by being there. This looks like a situation where an individual arrived to inflict maximum damage and kill law enforcement, Noem said. I am envious of her mind-reading ability. For my own part, I saw a guy executed while face down on the street. This is Jeffrey Blehar in the National Review saying that she needs to go. What happened in that meeting last night, Tyler? Is the president actually still behind his DHS secretary?
By all accounts, yes. I mean, we heard him on the South Lawn of the White House today as he departs for Iowa, asked about the potential of her leaving, and he said no. He thinks she's doing a good job. And I think it's important to note the meeting yesterday that we reported in the New York Times was one that she requested. So Secretary Noem asked to see the president, and the White House said okay. And so the meeting, while it was nearly 2 hours, was not only about the Minnesota response. That is something they discussed and part of the broader conversation, but there were other topics that were discussed as well. It was not a crisis meeting. The president at no point suggested either her or Corey Lewandowski, her top aides, jobs were at risk. And so while the president has been concerned about the media coverage around this incident and the killing of Alex Preddy, he is not seeming to think he needs to change personnel in his cabinet or at the White House over this. I think he's mainly focused on trying to change the narrative because he thinks it's overshadowing his accomplishments on the border, on immigration. And as we head toward the midterms, these are issues that have historically been popular for Republicans, and there's concern within the party. We've seen that publicly from allies of the president, Lindsey Graham chief among them, that these scenes, these images from Minnesota are hurting the president and his party politically.
Yeah, we're going to get to all of that in a little bit because there is a lot there regarding Republican reaction. It does do a lot to explain why at least there's a change in leadership on the face of it, with Bovino out and Homan in. Practically speaking, though, what does it mean that Homan is the better face of this than Bovino is?
Not much. And if I could just echo Tyler here, why did Donald Trump end family separation in 2018?
Public outcry.
Not because he was morally opposed to it, but because he said, quote unquote, I didn't like the sight and the feeling of the families being separated, responding to Ginger Thompson's audio from ProPublica, where we heard the Border Patrol agents saying about the kids crying, oh, we have an orchestra here. This is what he's doing right now. And putting Tom Homan there instead of Gregory Bovino is putting one of the architects of the family separation policy in charge of immigration enforcement. Tom Homan said to me on the second day of the raids in Los Angeles, someone is going to die. They knew this all along. Renee Good died. Alex Preddy died. There have been migrants that have died in these enforcement operations. And this is something that Tom Homan has telegraphed 7 months ago to me. Even if Kristi Noem was out, when he replaced Kirstjen Nielsen in the wake of family separation, he put in Kevin McAleenan, another operator who was involved in the policy. After Kevin McAleenan was out, he put in Chad Wolf, another operator who was involved in the policy. You're hearing nothing about Stephen Miller, the architect of family separation, the architect of the largest mass deportation campaign in American history, losing his job. You're hearing about an optical change, removing Greg Bovino, who, was on the scene minutes after he threw that tear gas canister last week in Minneapolis. You're hearing about Greg Bovino moving out and Tom Homan moving in. Substantively, I cannot imagine that they're going to have an operational posture change. Perhaps things get quiet for a minute, but we're only going to have to wait and see. I'm just telling you, the personnel that are there are the same hardline personnel that Donald Trump has been relying on for the 2 terms of his presidency.
What has it been like in Minneapolis?
Tragic, awful. Same as it's been, honestly, in Los Angeles and in Chicago, where I was, and in Charlotte, where I was. And when you walk the hallways here of 26 Federal Plaza. My mom is from St. Louis Park in Minneapolis. I went back to Minneapolis many summers when I was a kid for the State Fair. It's an incredible, incredible place, very civic-minded place, a place where you know your neighbors. I mean, just like everywhere else. Right now, people are terrorized, terrified that anywhere in that city, something like this could be coming around the corner. And I was on the air with you in South Minneapolis. In 2 days I was there, both in Columbia Heights, where they took that young boy, Liam, and in South Minneapolis, where Mr. Preddy was killed, where Renee Good was killed. They're smashing cars, pulling people out of windows. Operations where they're taking 2-year-olds with their parents and sending them to Texas and then sending them back. This is happening every day on the streets, and I don't see any sign of it stopping.
There is a difference between the DHS, how it's run this time around versus how it ran during the first administration. I mean, there was always policies that caused uproar and inflicted trauma. But DHS was willing to engage with reporters in sometimes meaningful ways during the first administration. Have you had any luck this go around?
No, I asked to interview Bovino. I don't know how many times I've asked Tricia McLaughlin to interview Greg Bovino over the course of these operations, and I was always told that it wasn't going to happen. Yeah, I will say, Katie Miller, Stephen Miller's wife, did let me inside the facilities during family separation to see the separations
but they also
for myself.
Wanted those publicized.
I think that's true. But look, they also want us to see the images that are playing out on the street because they believe that deterrence works, that it'll scare people away from coming to the country or maybe get people to self-deport. And we know over decades of bipartisan, deterrence-based, punitive-based policy that criminalizes migrants, it doesn't work, and people will continue to come here unless there is some kind of different approach that is not what you're seeing play out on the streets of America.
I'm genuinely curious. Did you remember a time during the first administration where officials were so willing to blatantly lie about the facts of a case or what we've seen with our own eyes in the way that we've witnessed the past few weeks, first with Renee Good and now with Alex Preddy, and especially with Alex Preddy? Kristi Noem coming out almost immediately and saying he was brandishing a gun, that he was approaching law enforcement officers with the intent to kill them. The video does not show that.
Yeah, no, this is incredibly consistent. They are specialists in gaslighting. There is no family separation policy, they told us over and over in the first term. There are tweets from Kirstjen Nielsen that are still on X from that time period, insisting that was the case, despite the fact she signed option 3 on the decision memo, effectuating the policy and making it possible. They will tell you that the things you are seeing and experiencing, the things I saw with my own eyes inside those facilities, I saw in the streets of Minneapolis and Chicago and Charlotte and LA, are not how it's playing out, that these are the worst of the worst they're going after, not high school students and college students going home to see their parents for Thanksgiving, not 2-year-olds and 5-year-olds in Minneapolis. They're going to tell you this is the worst of the worst, and I will tell you there's nothing true about that.